Hi everyone. We have another talk here before the big break, and I think most of you have a little bit of experience with malware. If you find something, a virus or something, you know it's there, but if you don't find anything, can you say the machine is clean? I have a security researcher here, Joanna Rutkowska, and she can answer the question, I think. Please give her welcomes.
Welcome, everybody. The title of today's speech is Stealth Malware. Well, the original title was supposed to be Can Good Guys Win? But actually I decided to change it in the last moment to Stealth Malware towards verifiable operating systems. So basically that's going to be about what we need to do with our operating systems to make them verifiable. And what does it mean verifiable? It means that we can actually prove that they are not compromised. So let's start with some basic stuff. So stealth malware, it's usually what everybody understands as rootkits, backdoors, keyloggers, stuff like that. Stealth is the key feature here because stealth means that actually antivirus programs, legal processes, administrators can see it, right? So actually, we should never know that we have ever been infected. So we have a little paradox here. How can we actually know what's going on in the wild if actually we don't have good mechanism to detect it? So today, it's actually very simple because today we actually count that the malware is buggy. So we have a bunch of hacks. If you look at our antivirus industry, we have a bunch of hacks which try to detect various, well, let's say, compromising techniques in kind of a chaotic way. It's actually true that if we don't detect anything, that doesn't mean anything. This is nothing good, right? Because we want a systematic way to verify that the system is clean, and we don't want to have just a bunch of just a bunch of hacks which just proves nothing. There are 4 myths which I often encounter about stealth malware fighting, which many people believe in. Myth number 1, this is the most popular one. If you want a definite way to detect malware, we just need to remove the disk from a machine and analyze it on a clean computer. Or we need to boot a system from a clean CD or whatever. It's surprisingly many people believe that this is true. But of course they forget that there are malware which can be non-persistent, and also they forget that we can have malware which is persistent, but the persistency is not on hard disk, but it's actually in some other resources like in BIOS, PCI, ROM, and similar stuff. John Heisman did some work in this area quite recently. So basically, analyzing hard drive is not a good way to detect malware in general. Of course, we might find something. We probably find 80% of malware this way, but if we don't find anything, that doesn't mean anything. So myth number 2 is, well, every malware needs to call phone home, right? Or needs to leak some data, needs to listen for some commands, so some kind of communication needs to be deployed. Right? So the easiest way is to forget about operating system verification, forget about operating system at all. Just look at the network traffic, analyze the traffic, and detect every single malware. Right? And of course this is not true because we have various covered channels which could be used, which are more or less stealthy, but some of them are virtually impossible to detect in practice. So a little digression about covered channels to make it clear for everybody. So we have this server over here. Let's say it's compromised. Let's say it's some kind of backdoor installed here. Let's say attacker wants to control it in some way. So there's lots of traffic to this server. Well, that's because it's a server, right? So as we see on the next slide, on the next two slides, there are various ways in putting our covered channel in this legitimate traffic without generating any extra traffic. This is the very simple and very bad example, but it gives some idea. This is if we wanted to send requests to a HTTP server. We see the hidden information here, but of course this is very basic and trivial to detect. So another example is Nushu. Actually, I presented Nushu in this very room 2 years ago. And Nushu is a passive covered channel, meaning that it was implemented in Linux kernel and was sitting in Linux kernel and was only changing outgoing packets. It was changing the ISN field of TCP SYN packets. And also, of course, it was taking care of changing the ISN field when packets were transmitted from the host, and when ACK packets were coming back, the ISN field was changing back, so the connection wasn't broken. And here we see the scenario for Nushu. There are two scenarios. One scenario is the classic scenario with server, which was 3 slides ago, and this scenario is this scenario for client computer. So we have a Nushu sitting here, and we have a compromised router or something like this, which observes the traffic and gets the information from the ISN numbers. And when I was presenting Nushu 2 years ago here, there was Stephen Murdoch sitting in the audience from Cambridge Computer Laboratory, and actually a few months later he found several problems with Nushu, which allowed for its detection. And one of the problems was that actually the ISN numbers with which Nushu replaced the ISN they were more random than the original Linux ones. There were some other mistakes which I made because I'm not actually an experienced cryptographer. But also Stephen proposed a way how to improve Nushu, because he did a detailed analysis of Linux kernel ISN number generator, and not only Linux but also BSD, I think. So he proposed how to improve it so that it actually mimics the original generator, right? But the question is, this is about improving Nushu. So now the question is, does the improved scheme is actually totally undetectable? Well, probably not. Probably in theory, we can imagine a very sophisticated statistical test of the random number generator in kernel, which would, well, we can imagine a very sophisticated statistical test which would reveal differences between this generator in kernel and my generator in Nushu, right? But this is only theory. This is maybe possible in lab when we have Nushu, we can generate 100,000 packets, we can analyze them. But imagine deploying this kind of detection in your corporate network. This will not work because we will have to know, well, imagine we have this network and we have this gateway, we want to put NIDS here and we want to implement this detection in this NIDS. We need to have statistical models of all ISN random number generators in our network. This is unfeasible in practice. So that was myth number 2. It was about that it is possible to detect malware by just looking at the network traffic. The next myth is that actually to detect stealth malware, well, we need to look at hidden objects, right? So we have all those hidden process detectors, we have hidden threats detectors, not so many. We have, of course, lots of hidden files detectors, hidden registry keys detectors, etc. Well, because if something is stealthy, it means that something needs to hide something, right? Well, of course not, because it's possible to create, well, I call it stealth by design. And I gave example of such rootkit 1 year ago at Black Hat Federal. It's called DeepDoor, and DeepDoor was built in such a way that it does not create any objects in the system. So it doesn't create processes, it doesn't create threads even. It has its own implementation of TCP/IP stack. It has its own implementation of useful shell commands like ls, ps, get, put, etc. Actually, it's pretty easy to have this TCP/IP stack implementation, even though many people think it's not that easy, because we have a lot of open source TCP/IP stacks for 8-bit microcontrollers and 16-bit microcontrollers, and they are pretty useful for this purpose, actually. So I demonstrate this DeepDoor, and well, it offers all the functionality which classic rootkit does, which classic rootkit like Hacker Defender does, but still it doesn't create anything. So there are no hidden objects in the system. So looking for hidden objects doesn't make much sense to detect this kind of malware. And finally, myth number 4. Well, we just need to deploy efficient prevention technology, like kernel prevention, like GR security, or driver signing for Vista, and many others, or secure level in BSD. Thank you. And we can forget about rootkits, right? Because our kernel is secure. Or maybe malware can do something with processes, but we don't care that much because our kernel is secure. Well, of course, this is not true, because every single prevention technology I can think of has been, at least once in the past, has been proved to be bypassable. And also, even if the technology was, even the prevention technology, kernel prevention technology, to make it specific, was perfect, we still have, we can never eliminate possibility that there will be, for example, a buffer overflow in graphics card driver, or network card driver, or some antivirus kernel component, as we saw some time ago. So prevention is a very good thing. I'll be talking about it. Oh yeah, this is it. So we've got GR security bypass, SL Linux bypass, OpenBSD secure level bypass a few months ago, Vista kernel driver signature bypass, and others as well. So the moral is that we cannot rely on prevention technology only. I'm not saying this is bad. Most of those technologies are very good, and it's a very good idea to have them, but I just want to say this is not enough. Yeah, it's surprisingly many people I talk to from security community, they don't distinguish prevention from detection. So I intentionally put this slide to make it even clearer. Prevention is different than detection. Prevention is all we do that the attacker doesn't get into the system, but detection, on the other hand, doesn't care much about what we did in the past. Detection is just to answer one question.